Hey guys, so we're back. Track's ready for ballasting. Now, ballast colour is a very personal choice unless you're ballasting something prototypical and you want to match the ballast that's there. And there's lots of different ballast available on the market. I use Woodland Scenics quite a lot. It's pretty good ballast. And sometimes I mix it. That is a mix between medium and there's some fine in there as well. My method of ballasting is quite different to most, because I've developed this method really just to try and speed ballast layouts when we're building layouts here in the workshop, and it works out really well. It's very quick, it's very easy, and it involves using a hoover. You just need a vacuum cleaner, and what I do is I put this badly taped up nozzle, but I have a tube on the end of it, and the tube is flexible. And also then on the bigger part of the nozzle, the vent here to reduce suction, you leave that open because you don't want too much suction going up the straw or the tube, because it'll remove all the ballast. And the idea about this is once the ballast goes down between the sleepers, you want to hold the nozzle probably about 20 millimeters or so away from the top of the track, and you want to move it in a circular motion like this. And doing it in a circular motion like this will actually make the ballast move around in circles, and it will interlock together, and anything that's sitting on top of the sleepers will just be sucked away, and everything in between the sleepers will stay put, because friction on the surfaces of all the individual pieces of ballast will actually keep it together. And now, okay, you can suck it up if you're not careful, but once you stay about 20 millimeters away from it, it's usually fine. And on this video, I'm also going to ballast the point in, completely ballast it in one go with the rest of it. Because using this method, I can get all of the ballast out from inside the point, from all the places you don't want it to be. And the really place you really don't want ballast is in each side of the tie bar. Now you can ballast up and around it, but so as we go through it, I'll show you. So we're starting off with some Woodland Scenics medium and fine mixed ballast. There's a few different types in this one, and it's really simple. All you got to do, you want some sort of little cup to shake it out, and literally this is what you want to do. And don't be afraid to get it in there. So just keep spreading it out till it just gets to the top of the sleepers. And don't worry about it spreading all over the place for the moment. We can get that back out with the hoover. Don't be afraid of it, just lash it on out. And we'll create a bit of a ballast shoulder, a bit of a hair in it, because I have a dog in the workshop and his bloody hairs get everywhere. Okay, so everything is looking, any areas that you see that are a bit low, there we go. Okay, so that's our ballast down. Very quick and easy to do. So I'll get rid of some of the excess, because the next thing I need something to rest my hand on. So I just use a block of wood, and then when I have the vacuum up and running, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to be like this, and I use the block as a support for my hand. So the next thing to do is turn the vacuum on, so it's going to get noisy for a few minutes. It'd be handy if I actually plugged it in. Okay, and here we go. So I'm going to start with the track that's furthest away from me, and we'll work this section in first. walk away now. And hopefully you guys can see this. Okay, so you can see here we've created a ball spot, but I don't want ballast in certain areas of the point, so I'm just going to use it to suck some of that ballast out. And then I'm just going to use my finger, pop a bit of ballast into some of the areas, not all of them. And then we'll go back again. Little tiny ball spot in here, and we'll just go back over that. That's not looking bad. Now what we're going to do, we kind of messed it up a little bit here, but we'll put a bit in there. So now we need to tackle the edges, and all we're going to do here is okay, and it really is as quick as that. Now, typically before I'd start, I might paint these areas grey on the point, but I can always go back and add a bit of ballast in here and manipulate it with a brush. Now, the next step you really want to do is you want to make sure that all points are flicking across, and you can see that is a little bit stiff at the moment. But if you just keep rattling it away and switching it over from side to side, and it will get easier because the ballast you'll see the ballast starting to move around. The vibrations in the point will help that settle down. Now you can also have a little brush handy, which I don't, so let me grab one. So it's always an idea just to have a small brush handy so that you can actually manipulate some of the ballast that's in there, and you can get right in there and move. I can just see a few grains here that are just kind of, I really don't want them in the way of those point blades, so I'm just going to brush them back a wee bit. And I don't mind them sitting on top of the sleepers there, because I can address that now in a minute with the hoover. So now if I switch it, it's nice and smooth. And that's really what you want. You don't want any ballast on top of the sleepers, particularly the parts where that blade rests against. You don't want any ballast in there. It'll make it very, very difficult then for a point motor to switch the point. Also, if the point doesn't go all the way across, if there's a piece of ballast stopping that blade meeting the side rail, it won't bring power up into the frog of the point. So as soon as a loco enters and goes up the point and enters this area, it will just stop dead because it's not delivering the power up. And also with ballasting, it's also important not to get glue inside this area here either, because if you get glue in between the rail and the blade, it will create an insulation point and it won't allow power to cross from the rail into the blade, and then that carries the power up the point and then into the frog. So it's very important to keep all of that clear. But my next part of ballasting, when I show you how to do the gluing, you will actually find the tricks I use to do this. It will, you won't have a ton of glue sitting on top of the rail, so it's very, very little cleanup to do after. Now the last thing I want to do is really kind of sprinkle just a little bit of ballast in around this area here on the point. I don't want to have really too many bald spots. Now it is possible to get a lot of ballast into these areas and kind of keep it clean. So you can see here I'm just sprinkling a few in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the point over to the other side. And then just sprinkle a little bit of ballast just around that. And I'm going to use the brush just to clean it off. It's probably a bit too big of a brush to be doing this with, but anyway. Okay, and it's switching over. You can see some of that is jumping from side to side. And then you can just basically brush away any of the excess. And I'm going to get the hoover now and just tidy up the last few bits. And we just had our main light go out in the middle of all of that. Okay, so next stage now is to prep it for ballast. So I'll get everything ready and then we'll come back guys, ready for the next step. Okay, so our ballast is down. I'm happy with everything. So the next step is really to glue it in place. So the glue I use is this stuff here. Don't know if you can see it. It's Mod Podge, but it's matte Mod Podge, and what I like about it, it dries completely matte. So because if you use PVA for ballasting, the PVA will sit on top of the sleepers and you'll get a bit of a glossy shine off it. So the matte Mod Podge is brilliant because it just dulls everything right down and makes it all blend in quite nicely. But before you want to apply the glue, you need to make up a solution of just water and washing up liquid. For say a litre of water, you want about 3 drops of washing up liquid, and you need to get all of this damp before you go applying the glue. And the reason for that is you don't, if you apply a drop of glue to this ballast as it's dry, it will actually lift the ballast up, and then the ballast will actually move around and it destroys what all the nice work that's gone into it previously. So the first thing to do, and you need a very fine spray bottle. You want something that sprays a very, very fine mist. And the idea is you want to spray it from a distance. You'd nearly want to be a meter above it and spraying down over it. So when you pull the trigger on the bottle, that jet of water that comes out, there's pressure behind that, and that can actually blow the ballast away as well. So you want to be very much above it and let the water droplets, very fine droplets, drop down on it and let it soak in. So that's the first step of ballasting. You need to get that fairly wet as well to get it done. The next thing to have ready then is your glue, and I've made up this. It's a 50-50 mix with water and matte Mod Podge, and then a drop of two of washing up liquid in there as well, and that just helps the glue absorb into the ballast, and the ballast will actually pull that glue into it. So first step is let's get some water down onto our little diorama, and I'm going to spray from quite a distance, and I'm just spraying very, very gently. And actually, if you look, I can see some of that ballast starting to move because it's so dry. And don't be afraid of getting this wet because it will dry out. And you can see it now, it's starting to get damp. You can see the beads, the water beads are now sitting on top of the track. So we're going to let that soak in. Give it a little bit, give it a couple of minutes. It's still not wet enough, but you just need it. You need to give it a minute and let that water absorb in there before applying any more. Don't worry about water like that on the surface. It will dry out, and even on MDF, this stuff, you know, you can actually get it quite wet. I've had puddles of water on layouts and it's actually been fine. So there's no problem at all with that. It's easy to do. So let's apply a bit more water. And from this side. Okay, and that's enough water in it now, and now we need to just leave that set for a couple of minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a little bit of paper towel, and I'm just going to mop up that bit of excess water that's around there. And be very careful not to touch the ballast, because as soon as you touch wet ballast, that's it. It will stick to the paper towel, and it won't go back into position, and it's very hard to try and actually get that ballast back. If you do make a mistake at this stage, the best thing you can do at this stage is just to let it dry. If you find you mess up a bit of the ballast, all you got to do is just let it dry off and then take it back, reapply it and start again, and that's really as easy as that. So it's easy to do, you know. So we're going to leave that for a couple of minutes and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so now that we have the board, the ballast is nice and damp, and it's now ready for our glue. So it's matte Mod Podge, and it's mixed 50-50 with water with a drop of washing up liquid in there. And the washing up liquid helps break surface tension in the ballast, so the glue can be absorbed quicker into it. So you want a small pipette like this one. You get them from Mark's Models, or you buy them online, and you just want to drop it in, but don't drop it on the track. And as you can see there, as I drop it in, it literally just gets sucked into the ballast. So go to each side of the ballast and just drop it in, and don't be tempted to squirt it in one big go, because the second you squirt it, the pressure of the glue coming out of the pipette will actually push the ballast, and you'll get holes. But they can also be fixed up after. And if anything happens, if you get a problem through, when you're applying the glue at this stage, don't be tempted to reach in and kind of try and adjust it with your finger or a brush or anything like that, because you'll just make it worse. The best thing to do is just keep ballasting, let it dry, and you can scrape this stuff back quite easily, reapply a bit of fresh ballast, and then glue that in. So all I'm doing here is I'm only dropping the glue at the edge of the ballast. I'm not putting any glue into the center of the track at all. And it's through capillary action that the glue will just absorb through and soak its way in, and soak its way in between the sleepers. This way I don't get any glue on the sleepers themselves, and everything just stays off to the side. And you just want to keep on going, applying. You can see that the ballast changes colour. It goes to a milky white. You don't want puddles and puddles and puddles of glue, but you need enough. Now the next thing to do is to watch the ballast between the sleepers. Now at the end here, I'm going to apply a little bit here. And it doesn't matter, if you want to apply glue directly in here, it's okay to do so. But I always prefer to do it from here, because you never get glue on top of the sleepers doing it this way. So you just need to keep applying the glue, and you will start to see the glue appear. You can actually see it appearing here and here as it soaks its way through the ballast. So I'm just going to keep going. And the other thing to be careful of is not to get glue into this area here in the point. You don't want glue on the tie bar, and I actually got a little bit in here. I kind of squirted a bit too much. Not the end of the world. I'm just going to leave it exactly like that, because I know this switches freely. It means I can actually just move the tie bar and break that lightly glued joint, and it will be okay. It won't be the end of the world. I'm putting some extra glue at this end here because we have a lot of loose ballast. So this way ensures, doing it this way, it means you will never get glue on the tops of the rails. You won't get glue in here into the point, into in between the blades and the rail. So it'll always be, everything will work exactly as it should do. So I'm just going to keep doing this. And that's really all there is to ballasting. It seems a lot of people are afraid to try it, but if you're nervous about it, just do what I'm doing here. Get a board, put a point on it, put a bit of track on it, and have a play. Rather than doing it on your layout and then kind of, if you're nervous you might create a mess. You're better off doing it this way. Now if you find that you can't get it right in here into the point, sometimes it can take a long time, but I can see here that it is starting to absorb in here and in here, but sometimes in the V it can be hard to get. So I'm going to place a few drops in here and be very, very careful. Just let it drop down onto it. Now I can see I got a tiny bit on top of the rail. I'm just going to get that with my finger now. Now afterwards you can give it a good scrub with a track cleaner. It will remove anything that's left. And now I can see the center of the track is really starting to get that white look to it, which is what you want. So you want this appearance all the way through the ballast on each side. If it doesn't look like this in the middle of the track, it's not glued. You don't have glue in there, it's just water. And when this dries out, it will that ballast will just fall out. So just keep applying it. Anyway, so I'm going to let this soak in. I'll add a little bit more glue and I'll just keep an eye on it just to make sure I've got my glue all the way soaked in. And once I have that done, then that's our ballast complete. So it's pretty easy, as you can see. There really is nothing to it. Nothing to be afraid of, so give it a go, and give it a go on something, you know, a bit of spare bit of wood or anything at all, and it will give you a better idea and a better feel on how to move the ballast around. And if you find bits of ballast are caught in the points or anything like that, don't worry about it. Let it set, let all the glue set, and then go back over it with either a small screwdriver or a blade or something like that, and you can just pick them out if need be. But I find usually when you've done all the prep work to begin with, the glue should tie everything together. And the key thing is that with the glue, apply it slowly. Don't try to rush it, because what can happen is, particularly with Woodland Scenic's ballast, because it's very light, it will actually float to the surface of the glue, and then it will settle back down again, but it will move and create small holes and stuff like that, and it doesn't look very good. So here we go. So what I'll do next is, when we get this tidied up, the next in the series then is to move forward, and we'll start doing some scenery on this diorama board. We'll do maybe an embankment here, a small embankment over there, and I'll show you how we do the scenery from the ground up, basically. So I hope you liked the video. I would appreciate if you could subscribe, like the video, maybe share it, would be great. Yeah, so till the next time, take care.